Testing 1, 2, 3. All right. We got a video react that I'm going to do. Big fan of Joe Grand, right? He's done some pretty good hacking content in recent years. Few and far between. I want to say that he was a former member of the hacking group Loft. I'm probably embarrassing myself by getting that wrong right now. No, it was definitely Loft. I sometimes flip-flop Loft and the CDC, but Joe Grand is a very talented hardware hacker who, in recent years, has been making a thing of helping people recover their Bitcoin wallets. And the title of the video that we're about to watch is very intriguing to me and immediately makes me think of my time in college when I took Unix and network security class with the guy who signed my computer science diploma, right? And one of the projects that we had to do was a password cracking assignment. We had 20 passwords, each increasing in difficulty of crack, right? And I got 19 out of the 20. I got a very good grade on that assignment. But that assignment was notorious because allegedly only one person in the history of the class had ever gotten the final password. And after you complete the assignment, the teacher lets on what you had to do to actually crack that final password. And the title of this video is very close to that. I believe that we're going to end up taking some of the same steps that one would have had to have done in order to successfully crack that password. It involved a vulnerable version of a particular programming language library that, in order to take advantage of, one would have to install that old version of the language, and you have to discover what that version is somehow. And I think we're going to probably end up going through similar steps. You know, it's kind of like akin to taking an old video game and then resetting the clock or moving the clock on the game itself in order to actually achieve some sort of effect, like, for instance, skip by a really annoying boss fight, like in Metal Gear Solid 3. So let's do this thing. Lights on first. All right, let's fucking go.
What if I told you that we could hack time? To recover over $3 million of Bitcoin from a software wallet that's been locked since 2013.
An incredibly powerful clickbait title, but who doesn't want to hack time, right?
I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. I just landed in Frankfurt and finally am able to create another video. This is a project unlike anything I've worked on before, and I can't wait to share it. A lot of people have been asking, is Joe Grand still alive? Yes, I'm still alive. It's been a really busy year with a lot of projects, and I just haven't really had a lot of time to interact online. I've been on
Amen to that.
Zoom calls for hours, talking to people, trying to figure out if their projects are real. A lot of times they're not. Sometimes the value's not there.
This is the money shot, 0.003 Lavar.
But other times, we run into really interesting projects that we can help with. There was one guy that actually threw his Ledger wallet into the water for some reason, and it sat submerged for 7 months. He had to hire a dive crew to go down and pick it up, and they sent it to me, opened it up,
Nastiness.
removed all of the corrosion, ended up repairing the device,
Mr. Pin, oh, that's a good sign.
and could access his funds. There was a family
That's fucking amazing. Like, this dude is so consistently on with breaking into and recovering hardware wallets. Like, it almost makes someone even consider not even fucking with crypto anymore, right? Like, if a hardware wallet itself is not secure, is anything, right? Like, is it an implementation issue? Is it a protocol issue? Like, what's the deal? How is it that we're able to so easily, well, it's not necessarily easily, it's a lot of fucking work.
Family who unfortunately had a son who passed away. Right before he died, he told his brother that he thought the password for his software wallet was the name of his grandmother. We were able to do some brute forcing and try some different combinations of passwords, and we were able to get it. On rare occasions, I'll even leave the safety of my lab to meet with people in person.
The stories that we feel have, some interesting element, we feel like those are cool to show to the world.
A lot of them have a personal story connected to their cryptocurrency. This project is a software wallet with $1.6 million. And the story begins with my friend Bruno.
Yeah, so this was probably a project that took over several months for the worth to increase by that much. There was definitely a recent period where Bitcoin exploded again recently, so.
Hey, I made it. How are you?
Good to see you, man. I'm really excited.
Good, yeah.
I first met Bruno when he saw one of my earlier videos, and he reached out to me for help with the project. It turns out that Bruno is also a hacker and has a lot of experience with the software side of things.
But first we should get caffeine.
We became good friends.
Fucking amen. Amen to that shit.
And worked on a lot of really interesting stuff together. Bruno's one of these guys where he's just really low-key, but he's probably the smartest person in the room. He grew up as a hacker and has some really funny stories about what he did when he was growing up.
I think it was when I was 12, 13, I found about cryptocurrency, and back then with my school friends, we already also started mining on the computers in the school. So we had like a mining operation there.
That's fucking based. Mining cryptocurrency on your school's computers. Today's youth have it so much better than I had it, right? Like, there's an appreciable level of, like, how good you had it based on, like, what era you were born into and what technologies you had access to as a child. And, even in college, even in fucking senior year of high school, there were freshman students who were doing some really amazing game development stuff even back then, even back in 2004. Just absolutely insane what these kids are able to do nowadays. Joe Grand's a little bit older than myself, but, not only are there levels to this shit, but everyone comes in at a different level. All right, back to it.
We hacked into the school system, so we had access to the servers, stored all the mining software. We didn't earn much coins, but we just liked the concept of earning like digital money just by running a PC.
It's not often to find somebody that you actually can work well with together, and when you do, it can be really great.
I can't wait to see his reaction.
Yeah. Michael had emailed me
Actually, amen to that shit, because collaboration is really where it's at, right? Like, I could sit here all day building my own shit for a while, and it's a fucking lot of work. Yeah, I could sit here all day writing my own shit. It's a lot of work. But really, collaboration's where it's at.
A little over a year ago, and he basically said, I have a password that I had set on a software wallet back in 2013, created a password for that wallet with a password generator called RoboForm.
Password generation is pretty useful. As a exercise, one can write their own. It's not that hard, and you can kind of do cool things that others might not be able to do. There's a lot of different approaches people take. You have, on one hand, the fully random password, as in every character is a randomly generated byte, and you have a source of that randomness that makes a decision on what byte to put next. And out of this, you can get some pretty strong passwords, right? It's just the nature of information entropy. But the other approach that you might hear of is the correct staple horse battery approach, where you take easy to remember strings such as correct, horse, battery, and staple, and put them together to form a funny amalgam or whatever. And this is like a good approach because it creates easy to remember passwords while also creating strong passwords, satisfying the entropy information principle. So using a form generator to help you create good passwords is a very good idea in general. However, it is not without its flaws.
I used a program called RoboForm for managing all my passwords. I want to make it very secure. 20 signs with special characters.
20, 20 signs, as in 20 characters, and special characters. So he's, allowing for upper, lower, alphanumeric, plus special symbols.
Password generators are commonly used to create complex passwords because humans are very predictable and they'll use the same passwords over and over again, and that's just not secure. He said he
And that's, very clear cut. Like, a lot of that, I almost feel like in this day and age, shouldn't even have to be said, but I guess this is just how for granted that I take it, right? Just being in the space for as long as I have. But I guess you do have to regularly remind people and talk about these things because people will take them for granted. And, like, people still be sharing accounts and shit. People be still saying, hey, yo, what's your Netflix password? And then, like, fucking send a easy to crack password out through plain text. Even though law enforcement has stingrays, right? Even though man in the middle attacks are a thing, they won't even do it over fucking an encrypted protocol. Even try to protect the password. They just fucking do it. And I'm sure there are people this dumb when it comes to managing their cryptocurrency. It's not unfeasible to think.
used a 20-character password with uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, special characters.
Then it generated the password. I copied it, put it in the passphrase of the wallet, and also in a text file that I then encrypted.
The way he saved the password back then was by saving it in a TrueCrypt container.
Oh, that's kind of smart. I really enjoy TrueCrypt containers, right? It's like an encrypted file system that allows you to store files inside of it without having to like manually decrypt each individual file. Instead, you decrypt the container and then you get access to all your files. And the container itself is a file. So you could, on one system, copy over some sensitive files, encrypt the container, and then take that container and then ship it over to another machine. And it's fucking cool, actually.
Encrypted partition on his computer. That partition, basically a holder of data, got corrupted, which caused him to lose his password.
Now, that's... if he didn't make a backup of the container, that's on him. You make one mistake and the whole fucking empire crumbles, you know? Like, you can't predict what's going to happen to your data. And so, this, out of the redundancy principle, need to have backups of fucking everything at all times. Multiple backups if possible. Take advantage of the cloud. Copy that shit to a fucking Google Drive. Copy that shit wherever. Now, of course, in the event that your container gets stolen, you are certainly under risk of someone else cracking it, right? And that might be a good argument to have your own self-hosted solutions. Just saying.
At this time, I was like, okay, crap. A couple of €1,000, which was painful, but okay. But then
That's when we found out what's the price tag involved.
the Bitcoin price rise and rise.
This crazy amount of money where it's 43 Bitcoin.
1.6 million. I have this.
Whoa. 46 Bitcoin's a lot of fucking Bitcoin. I've had 3 at various points in life, right? Individually. Like, I've had a total of 3 Bitcoins ever. And, like, in this day and age, it just doesn't make sense to even try buying a whole ass Bitcoin anymore. But the value is very clearly there, if inflated, even though the token itself is deflationary.
Fortune.
46 Bitcoin is a lot of fucking Bitcoin. What does that come out to right now? 46 Bitcoin. Let's see, 67,844 times 43. Yeah, right now it's sitting at 2.9 million for 46 Bitcoin. That's pretty good. Just saying.
I can see it, but yeah, I cannot use it because I don't have the password.
He had only seen the actual password for about 10 seconds, so he really has no recollection at all of what that password could actually be.
Then I saw Joe's video, how he hacked the hard wallet, and that gave me confidence. Maybe
That was a great video. Joe Grand's other hardware wallet hacking videos are absolutely fucking phenomenal. I hope that we get, because it's software wallet, we're probably not going to get to see as much cool stuff as we did in the hardware wallet hacking videos, but
these guys have a clue how to help it.
I remember my response to him was, this is not going to work unless there's a bug in RoboForm that we can take advantage of.
aha. But there's always bugs. Even Rust is not free. No pun intended. Since the whole point of Rust is like about memory allocation problems and trying to like prevent developers from doing that sort of thing, even though it's got unsafe built in and yada yada yada.
So we turned down the project.
It's a really hard problem to have
Damn, they fucking turned it down. Shit.
because like from brute forcing, it's not possible.
Brute forcing a password is basically where you generate a huge list of every possible password based on your assumed parameters and try those one by one to see if you can access the system that's...
Brute forcing is a fun, subset of computation, right? Like, it's not smart, but you have to think intelligently in order to reduce your search space, because when you're brute forcing, you're dealing with very big numbers, right? So anything that can reduce the amount of work that you have to do is a good thing. So you always have to be thinking in terms of how many characters do I have to actually go for? What's the range? Are we dealing with upper or lowercase alphanumeric? Are we dealing with special symbols? Do we have any partial information about the existing password? Is there, anything in the password? And when you're dealing with pure random, oh man, the only thing you can look for is seed.
that's being protected by that password. Usually when you're brute forcing a password, somebody has some idea of what the password was. But if you don't have any prior information, you're doing an exhaustive search of the entire key space.
I swear to God on my entire family's life that I have not watched this video yet. This is a pure reaction. and all of the stuff that I'm saying before Joe says it is because I've walked down these paths for a little bit anyway, long enough to know what's involved. So when I'm thinking about these things and I'm saying my thoughts, I swear to God that I have not watched this video. This is a pure on the fly and real-time reaction. It's a shame that my bandwidth's not so great because I would be watching this live online, but hopefully you are entertained and you learned something along the way.
And that's a massive problem.
If we had to try every possible password combination, that's more than 100 trillion times the number of water drops in the entire world. If we think of one password being one water drop and we have to find that, it might be flowing under the river, it might be falling from the sky, it could be in any ocean, anywhere in the world. If we're able to...
I like the visual here. This is a really, really, really nice visual metaphor because people can think in terms of visuals. A lot of people don't really understand numbers the way that, you know, super complex math nerds like. I'm not a super complex math nerd, but I like numbers and I like fucking working with advanced math when I get the opportunities. And most people don't think in terms of big numbers, but what they do think in terms of visuals. So if you give someone a number and then, or like some really small probability, and then you give them some sort of visual component to like tie that together, then you can kind of achieve informational understanding, like information transfer. You can get someone to really grok, right? Like really understand what a big number is and means if you give them a visual comparison, such as if the password we're looking for is a drop of water, like Joe says, then you're looking at the number of water drops in the world.
able to reduce that somehow, then we can turn this insurmountable problem into maybe something that we can succeed with.
What did I talk about earlier? I swear to God I didn't watch this shit. Reducing the search space, right? Anything that you can do to, you know, if you know what your parameters are, like you said, we know the number of characters, we know upper or lowercase, so there's a big ass fucking probability. It's a big ass fucking number of passwords you can generate with those parameters. So you have to do some level of thinking in order to make that search space smaller so that you can really refine exactly where you're looking.
The reason we turned down Michael's project is we thought we would have to brute force this massive amount of possible passwords because he used such a huge password. Nobody would take on a brute forcing project of this scale. No matter how many computers they had, it just isn't feasible.
I already thought also that I can give it further to my child. One day he can use it and hack it. I think there's no real way right now to solve this problem, right?
So a year later, just a couple months ago, Michael reached back out and said, hey, do you want to reconsider doing this project? And within that time frame, Bruno had actually done some work reverse engineering a different type of password generator for a different project.
Sometimes it's possible when the software isn't written in a secure way, even though it's 20 characters, you find a way around it.
Bruno was like, well, maybe we can actually try to attack the RoboForm program itself instead of needing to brute force the actual password.
If you find a way, there's still a possibility.
So we decided now to take on the project, start exploring that avenue. And that's when we started doing some of this preliminary analysis to see if that was possible.
So what this makes me think of something. He said sometimes there's a bug that allows you to make some progress on the cracking of the password, right? And there was a recent video that I caught through the Primogen about, I want to say it was PayPal, right?
Paul, the head of PayPal database administration, carefully enters his elaborate passphrase at the keyboard in a darkened cubicle of 1840 Embarcadero Road in East Palo Alto. For the fifth time, he hits enter. The green on black console window instantly displays one line of text. Sorry, one or more wrong passphrases. Cannot reconstruct the key. Goodbye. Totally normal. Okay, sometimes we forget our passwords. Not a big deal. By the way, this would literally be the most terrifying thing in the entire universe. James, our recently promoted VP of Engineering, just climbed the desk at a nearby cubicle screaming, "Guys, if we can't get this key right away, we gotta start brute forcing it ASAP." It's gallows humor. Wait, what? He knows very well that brute forcing such a key would take millions of years, and it's already 6 a.m. on East Coast. Finally, the last person JK entered his passphrase, no error. The key still did not reconstruct character correctly. I got the goodbye, but something worked. I turned to the engineer and said, "What did you just type in that worked?" After a second of embarrassed mumblings, he admitted he chose the password assword. Assword saved PayPal. Can we just take a moment here and realize that assword saved PayPal? No way. Dude, how much do you want to bet before looking on? This is going to be some sort of stir and buffer length problem. How much do you want to bet that only small passwords worked and everyone's password got cut off to a certain length? Because was it a lightning bolt hit me and I sprinted back to my own cubicle in the far corner, unlocked the screen and typed in "man get pass"? Oh yes, on the command line while logging into CryptoServe in another window and doing exactly the same thing there. I saw exactly what I need to see. Today, should you try to read up the programmer's manual, aka the man page on GetPass, you'll find it has been long declared obsolete and replaced with a more intelligent alternative in nearly all flavors of modern Unix. Back then, if you wanted to collect some information from the keyboard without printing what was being typed onto the screen and remained POSIX compliant, GetPass did the trick because he did a POSIX only C implementation. GetPass did the trick. Other than a few standard file manipulation system calls, GetPass was the only operating system service call I used to ensure clean portability between Linux and Solaris, except it wasn't completely clean. Plain as day, there it was. The manual pages were identical, except Solaris had a special feature. Any passphrase entered that was longer than 8 characters was automatically reduced to that length anyways. Who needs long passwords? Am I right? Oh, come on, assword! Someone asked me later that day why it took us so long to bring the site back up. I simply responded with, should have read the fucking manual. Yes! Yes! RTFM! Let's go!
Like, it was a story about PayPal where the dude like encrypted the database with everyone's information in it, and it was a really unique schema. It was a 3 of 8, so like 8 people have their own passwords, and you had to enter the password, and only 3 people needed to enter their own passwords in order to decrypt the database. It was a very interesting setup. I forget the name of the encryption method or like how the schema was implemented exactly, but in the story, the TLDR of it was that you only had to enter the first 5 characters of the password in order to actually decrypt it, and somehow other people's passwords were getting cut off because the particular implementation that they were using did not make use of the full password and ended up truncating. Or rather, the version that they initially encrypted with used the vulnerable version. So when they were going to decrypt it with the newer version or the alternate version, and they were entering their full passwords, it wasn't truncating, so it was failing to decrypt. But when they went back and did it with the old version using only the first part of the passwords, it actually worked and they managed to recover everything. Little details like this do matter, and oftentimes, more often than should be, systems get set up in a way that, you don't notice this until, you're about to drive off the cliff.
Was a new approach, hacking a RoboForm. Now maybe we're back in the game.
In the world of software, and actually the world at large, creating random numbers is very, very hard. Some people might even say, well, a coin flip is random. If you know the velocity of the flick, what side of the coin you're starting on, and airflow and other parameters, you might be able to actually reduce the randomness. That's kind of what we're doing.
To identify how RoboForm creates the password.
If we can manipulate that randomness, we might be able to create a predictable output that we could use to try to crack Michael's wallet.
They asked me then now about which version I used when I created the password.
He created his wallet in 2013.
After the first payments into the wallet.
So we went through on the RoboForm website looking for what version of that software was available in 2013.
Get all the versions I could find.
It was pretty cool where he basically was like, here are the potential versions.
Then we found the changelog of RoboForm.
On the RoboForm website, they basically have a changelog, which lists
What did I tell y'all? Vulnerable version of the old software.
out the different changes they have as they change their software over time. This is the changelog, currently at version 9.5.6, the version that he used June 26, 2013. There was something interesting that we found in that changelog where a couple years later, a small comment.
Increased randomness. Why should they increase the randomness if a generator is generating secure passwords?
Does that mean that earlier versions of this program were vulnerable to something? Maybe they fixed the problem later on.
This is the heart of hacking right here, is reading the change logs and digging into the source code. More often, especially if you have access to stuff, if you're not doing like black box testing, and you're able to kind of understand these things, that software is not just one thing, it's a thing over time. It's an evolution, a process. It's not a thing, it's a doing, like martial arts.
But it just so happens that Michael was using this earlier version where randomness of the password had not been fixed yet. It's a pretty complicated thing to explain. You know, like this is not a normal process. Like this is really crazy. Okay.
Yeah, I can't believe that we're actually gonna do this. Like, it's so ridiculous.
The RoboForm password generator is a pretty big piece of software, but within this large program, we want to try to find that one piece of code where the password generation is happening. See if we can kind of create some code to communicate directly to that to generate the passwords that we want. The RoboForm software is known as what's called closed source. This basically is a black box, like you don't know what's going on inside. That's why we need to use a lot of these software reverse engineering tools to even peek inside.
We started to
So yeah, like I was saying earlier, you know, they don't have access to the actual source code, so they're gonna have to reverse engineer because it's a black box testing situation. At least they have the binary. At least it's not something that's like on a server that they have to do server testing on, which is convenient.
reverse engineer the software.
The first step was to understand if the generated password from the graphical user interface was stored somewhere in memory. We used a tool called Cheat Engine. What this does is let you search through different areas of memory while a program is running. We could at least narrow down which pieces of that program were being used. That's going to prove to us that we've attached to the correct piece of the RoboForm program. And now I can search through system memory to actually try to find that generated password. And
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. I need to do more process hooking and exploration because like being able to peek into RAM is really valuable, right? Like I've definitely had situations where I've found programs that I was doing pen tests on where the passwords were stored in memory and just totally, you know, available to be copied in plain text. Like you could use malloc to grab a giant block of memory that was like still full of garbage data, sift through it, and then find passwords that way. It's crazy.
then I'll click on scan. Yes, now we actually see there's 2 results for that password stored in system memory. And that gave us really good confidence that the password generator was happening within that program.
So untypical.
You think it's gonna fit on the plane?
Then we used a tool called Ghidra, a reverse engineering tool created actually by the United States National Security Agency.
Shout outs to NSA. for making Ghidra. I need to actually still fuck with that shit.
You can use the software to look at the machine code.
To let you basically reverse engineer and disassemble pieces of code. The process of using Ghidra is to help us search for that needle in a haystack. Tried to figure out where in this piece of code is the password generator function. This piece of software was really like Russian dolls. Our target was like the little doll in the middle that was generating the password. Then you have these different pieces of code on top of that. Kind of have to break through these different layers until we get to the one that we want.
It helps you to reverse the machine code to humanly readable code.
Ghidra luckily gives you what's called a decompilation view, a higher level human readable view.
But it's still really difficult, especially if you have a really complex software.
This is a massive amount of code, hours and hours and hours of work. We're definitely on the right track now.
Welcome to reverse engineering. You're going to be looking at disassembled code for a long time. You're going to be putting pieces together that do something in the end, and you have to be able to jump from one area to another and really understand like what's in this register and what's in this memory location at this address, and start really mapping everything out to get a strong visual and really dig in to understand where something is. It's not always going to be clear right away. You are looking at hours, if not days, of reading and just understanding stuff.
We're seeing references to a password generator within this code. We were able to actually narrow down where the password generator function was, number of characters for your password length, the minimum number of digits. Sounds like a password generator to me. This seems to be the candidate for the actual password generator routine that we're targeting. One of the pieces of the code that we found was really interesting is this reference to calling the system time. A reference in the assembly language, we can actually see that after it calls the time, it does some manipulation to that time value, and then it calls the function that initializes pseudo-random number generator with some seed value.
That's when we really got excited, because we knew, okay, we were on the right track.
That's what we were looking for. That's the key to this whole thing. If we can change the system time, that might mean that we can actually control what the output passwords are. We moved to...
Oh, man. So, Metal Gear Solid 3, there was a boss fight with my favorite boss in the game, the end. He's my favorite because he's an old man who sleeps a lot, and he's a sniper. And I like both of those things. And the boss fight's pretty fun, but you can actually skip it. You can actually change the system clock on your PlayStation 2 and move it forward by like 2 weeks. And you at the beginning of the fight, you save your game, you close it, you restart your system, and then you change your system time to be 2 weeks ahead. And if you wait for 2 weeks in the game without moving or anything, the boss dies. He dies of old age. And you can completely skip that boss fight just by changing the system time. So, in a similar way, they have identified that the password generation mechanism relied upon the system time for the seed. And so if you could simulate the same sequence of passwords that were generated when this dude got his initial password, you could, in theory, generate the same exact password without ever having to have brute forced anything.
To something called dynamic analysis.
In a perfect world, when you generate a password with a password generator, you expect to get a unique random output each time that no one else has. In this version of RoboForm, that's not the case.
While RoboForm passwords appear to be randomly generated, they're not. With the older versions of this software, if we can control the time, we can control the password.
So something relatable to this too in the domain of video games again. Many games like Minecraft and other like Sheeran rely upon a form of pseudo-random number generation that uses a seed value that can be used to replicate the dungeon or the world generation in such a way as like to be shareable with other people. Like two people running Minecraft or Sheeran. You know, like for instance in Sheeran, when you go to rescue people, the rescue password that is used in order to access someone else's dungeon to like replicate it is implemented as a sequence of characters like a password. So you know, two people can have that same password and get the same dungeon. That way it's like a replicatable experience. This relates to randomness because given the same seed value, you can, like for instance, simulate dice rolls in the same way as if you could repeat them. And this is pseudo random number generation. It's not true randomness.
Imagine that these cars represent my password, and every time I snap my fingers, I can generate a new password. If I wanted to control what my password would be, I could control the cars to give a predictable result. We can do the same thing to control RoboForm to get a predictable password.
Good luck.
Bruno, look, I'm controlling my password.
We wanted to understand if we could control the input.
It's kind of based. You know, just putting on an orange suit and then walking out. I wonder, they probably did not get permission to do that. I don't know if they're violating any sort of law. Not that I care, but it's kind of interesting to think about that they were able to do that and film it. You don't see many people. That would be a good prank. You know, like at what point are you going to get approached by cops for stopping traffic or pretending to be a construction worker? Like, is there any sort of law about pretend? Because yeah, obviously you get in trouble for pretending to be a police officer, right? But can you get in trouble for putting on an orange safety jacket and a hard hat and having some red flags and getting traffic to stop? It's not illegal, but it is good social engineering.
Put parameters, would that let us control the output? What we really wanted to know is, could we generate the same password twice? See if we can actually change the value of time to generate a known expected password. Dynamic.
I knew this was going to be exactly what they did based off the topic of the video. Like, it's a fun thing to think about, but in reality, it's not too much different than any other form of hacking or process, right? You're not actually hacking time, but you are playing with the system clock in order to manipulate a random seed.
Analysis is sort of like controlling time, where you can freeze and then, you know, go in slow motion to get a better sense of how things are operating.
It's like all the time control stuff in fucking Breath of the Wild, right? Like I haven't played the new game Tears of the Kingdom. I would like to. I hear it's way better than Breath of the Wild. And I understand that, yeah, Breath of the Wild was kind of like, you know, it was a launch title on the Switch. It was like their first foray into the system hardware to be able to see what they could do. You could look at it as like an experimental title to see how people like the graphics, because, yeah, obviously there's a lot of... I've got my own things to say about Breath of the Wild that other people have probably already said, but the time control aspects were kind of interesting, but left a lot to be desired. So time control, you know, with a grain of salt.
The execution at the right point and then start changing the time values and seeing if that gives us the result that we want. We use a tool called x64 debug. That basically loads in the program and then lets us control every single step. I have my breakpoint set at the location right before the generator gets initialized. Every time I click the generate new button, we're gonna stop execution at that spot. The time value is stored in a register, EAX. We can actually see EAX right now, basically a text representation of a binary number. So
this is kind of like GDB. You know, they're stepping through the program now, having messed with the time to grab new passwords and attempt to replicate generating that old password.
So we can rerun the program over and over again, and we'll see that value increment because it's time incrementing, because time has increased since we last generated a password. This is where hacking time comes into play. We can go ahead and actually try to change that time value to go back in time and make it match a password that we've already generated. What I'm gonna do is note the current EAX value, which is the last one that we just ran. That EAX value ends up generating a password of the 03 blah 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 ZBM. Let's generate a new password on the screen. Now the EAX value has changed because time has increased since the last time I generated the password. But this is where I can actually patch the memory and hack the time. Double click on EAX and change that value to the one that we've recorded previously. The EAX register has been updated. The RoboForm software is going to think the date is in the past. Regenerate the same password that we already know. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. And here it is. So we basically proved that we can generate the same password multiple times in a row. With a password generator that generates random passwords, we shouldn't be able to do something like that.
This was the first moment we knew that there's a good chance that we can generate his password.
So we can actually go and trick the system into thinking that we're back in 2013 and generate all the possible passwords within that time frame where we thought Michael had generated his password.
All right, so now they're going to create a block of passwords as if they had gone back in time and were using the software at that actual day, month, and year, right? In order to start generating a list of possible passwords given a seed from a certain time. So they're going to say at time 0 password, time 1 password, time 2 password, right? Until they have a big ass list of passwords, and it's going to be much smaller than attempting to directly brute force. So they've effectively reduced their search space by a very large factor.
We thought we were good to go. We thought the rest of it was going to be smooth sailing. All we had to do is write some code to control that password generator. But yeah, we were wrong.
Be on the lookout for Frankfurters.
Oh,
I bet you that
That's going to be curious. It's interesting to hear him say that. At this point, I would think that shit's kind of on lock. All you got to do is write some custom software to enumerate and plug shit in. But
place sells them. We're gonna see if they have a vegan one. Do you have any vegan Frankfurters?
No.
Thank you.
No visit to Frankfurt would be complete without a Frankfurter.
So the next step was to write this wrapper code
Build a code around this certain function.
to basically let us control the password generator function.
Take this Frankfurter, for example. If this is the entire RoboForm program, the password generator is just a small portion of that. So we wrote some code to wrap around that function to control it, kind of like how this bun wraps around the Frankfurter.
That's stupid.
This is the code that does it all. Changes the system time and saves the output every single second. Michael gave us a date range of when he thought he generated his password. These are the dates of the range that we generated the password. And that ends up being like millions of potential passwords.
There's always the possibility that this whole thing isn't possible.
We're gonna need to generate way more passwords to effectively check the entire time frame. This is the wrapper. Like, this assembly language really is the wrapper code. But then things started crashing. We were just getting crash after crash. The system wasn't working.
Crashing and crashing again.
We were working on the wrapper code all day.
We had this late night session.
Now it's like 2 in the morning. It was killing me to know that we were that close.
My notes from last night and today,
He continued working on it.
things that were crashing and trying to figure out why it was crashing.
Hours and hours and hours of debugging. We were so close, but it just wasn't working. But I couldn't help myself. I just had to keep going.
Then the next day he sent me a message that, guys, I did it, I cracked the code.
We eventually realized that we had to set certain memory locations to other values before we called that function.
Can now generate the whole time span of passwords.
Now we can actually run this code and let it start generating passwords. Here we go. Generating about 100 passwords per second. And we can actually see down at the bottom of the screen, our time is increasing. It's just so satisfying. It's like we're traveling through time. I know it sounds super cheesy, but it is really fun. So we basically generated the millions of passwords for that date range.
He sent those over.
He put it into his password cracking tool, and we got nothing.
oh, no, that sucks. All that work and still no result.
it didn't work. So
Oh man, you know, the date range could have been wrong. Michael did say that he set up his software wallet to buy some Bitcoin, but didn't actually set a password until later on. So we could be off with the date range, and we could be off with the parameters. Was he using uppercase and lowercase? Was he using numbers? Was he using special characters? We then started questioning everything. Were we even hacking the right password generator?
Whenever you get stuck like this, it's always a thing to go back to first premises.
I've learned that people's memories can be incorrect.
LeVar, this is from 2016?
I thought it was 13, 14.
This got us really, really nervous. Right when we thought we were so close, now the number of possibilities just completely open.
we started talking with Michael about the password configuration.
A couple of days ago, I got a call. Bruno asked me about some parameters. And I think like, oh, come on, guys, I gave you all the parameters.
He said to us he's like 90% sure that this is the configuration he has used, which made us even more worried.
It's 10 years ago. About what are you sure that you did 10 years ago?
And Michael had even sent us a message saying, you know, I'm thinking of going to a hypnotist.
Maybe the password is still stored in my subconscious brain.
And I was like, oh, this can't be happening.
That's hilarious. That's not going to work either. But it's funny that he's going to try that.
Michael had sent us a list of passwords that he had generated with RoboForm for other things. But there was just one that was 20 characters in length that was just numbers and letters. No special characters. But he had told us that he had used
20 signs with special characters.
So we decided, well, hey, let's just try this new range of passwords using these different parameters. Generated those, sent them to Bruno.
I started the script. Looked at the screen and I wasn't really sure, like it was showing something, and then I looked closer.
Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck.
And it was actually showing the password. I wouldn't have suspected this. Oh my god.
All right, so let's understand what they did to fix the situation, right? I want to go back on that because
Numbers and letters. But there was just one Michael had sent us. And I was like, oh, this can't be happening. Michael had sent us a list of passwords that he had generated with RoboForm for other things. But there was just one that was 20 characters in length that was just numbers and letters. No special characters. But he had told us that he had used
20 signs with special characters.
So we decided, well, hey, let's just try this new range of passwords using these different parameters. Generated those, sent them to Bruno.
so they slightly increased the range that they were working with, right? They still went through the same process. They still generated for the same time frame, but they extended it to include the possibilities based off these existing passwords that the guy had already generated. So given the passwords that he knew that he had generated before, they went back and regenerated passwords fitting the attributes of the passwords he knew that he had already created.
Bruno.
I started the script. Acted this. Oh my god.
That's fucking awesome.
Within like 20 minutes, Bruno sent me a message.
Just got this message from Bruno. Success. 20 characters long, but no special characters.
Oh.
Look at that. Little tweak like that is all it took.
Finally, after all of this work and the ups and downs of it,
Now we can go free these coins. He's gonna be very surprised.
we were finally able to access Michael's Bitcoin.
Joe had this crazy idea. Really excited.
This is completely ridiculous. Like, I can't actually believe that we're doing this. I don't even know if it's gonna fit on the airplane.
Wait, hold on. Okay. Okay. Nice.
They got him a check. That's fucking awesome, man.
What would I do with the assets if they could hack it?
This might be a little big for your car.
Pay debts from apartment,
Oh my God.
founding a new company.
That's not going anywhere. Oh, it's a nice view.
securing the future life of my son, right?
We're off.
I don't know. There are plenty of ideas that you can have.
We have an hour and 10 minutes. So this size is okay. It's good enough. We did it. Checked. I hope it's doing okay down there.
If I want to make fun of myself, I tell the story. Everyone in my family, every close friend knows it.
We're on La Rambla, the most famous street in Barcelona. Pardon.
In the end, it's a fun story, and still, I mean, there's still hope one day I can solve it. Oh my God.
Surprise. $1.6 billion.
It's joking.
We did it, but your parameters were wrong.
No, guys, come on. No, for real?
There you go.
Wow, yeah. That is so cool.
Well, it's not official till we sign the check. This project was really special to be able to work with Bruno and have so much fun achieving this goal together. I'm gonna keep on working on different hacking projects.
Thank you, guys. I run.
And continue to help people recover cryptocurrency that they've been locked out of. We know RoboForm has fixed this problem in future versions of their software, so really it's only a problem if you're using passwords that were generated prior to that fix in 2015.
Looking forward working with Joe together on hacking more software wallets in the future.
Yeah. If this project required hacking time, what dimension are we gonna have to hack next?
Man, that's such a feel-good story. What a good ending. God, I'm really glad that I went through that. And I got to share my thoughts. It's fucking amazing. God damn. Shoutouts to Joe Grand. Shoutouts to Loft. Keeping it real.